Okay, so let me take a. So guys, if you are coming in, welcome all. We will give another 10, 20 seconds for us to begin. All right, so it's 9 o'clock Pacific. I think we're past 30 seconds. So this is what I heard that the time for us to begin. So guys, everybody, welcome you all to today's topic on customer lifetime value. It's absolutely exciting to welcome you all. My name is Rahul Bhuman. I run the emerging business for Tech Mahindra. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay. I think this is one of those topics where there's been a lot of enthusiasm. We had close to 300 plus registrations. I'm using this LinkedIn for the first time, so I'm not really sure how many are on this live, but our host should be able to let us know. But 350 plus registrations is a good number, and we had people registered across the globe. We had around 35% from Americas, about 25% from Europe, and the rest from Asia. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys, wherever you're joining in. So coming to this topic, right, the customer lifetime value, as Peter Drucker, one of the eminent management consultants, says, the purpose of a business is to create and retain a customer. So customer lifetime value, CLTV, is all about that. Many of the enterprises use this particular metric to understand how valuable their customers are and how profitable they are. And this is a very important metric because using this metric, enterprises can now understand, where to focus their efforts in retaining their customers, in acquiring their customers. But on the other side, in this competitive world, there are so many options as well for customers. So acquiring and retaining them is actually a challenge for many of the enterprises. So this is where the customer lifetime value, a very important metric, comes to play. From the time of identifying, acquiring, and retaining, and understanding the valuable, quantifying the worth of a customer, in a way to speak, is what this session is all going to be. I mean, without further ado, let me quickly introduce the panel we have with us today. We have Scott Compton from Forrester. Scott is a retail e-commerce specialist with over 20 years of experience with direct-to-consumer marketing. He has expertise in customer experience, digital marketing, multivariant testing, and user experience. Lately, he's fascinated by advances in AI, personalization, privacy, and how data and insights enhance the customer experience. Welcome, Scott. It's a pleasure to have you here today with us. We have Amit Bhatia from Tech Mahindra joining us. Amit has 19 plus years of diverse experience across building his own company. He's been with large enterprises, working across strategy, supply chain. He's been in various industries across fashion, retail, and CPG industries. Currently at Tech Mahindra, he's leading fashion, lifestyle, and sports vertical. He also authored multiple white papers, articles, newspapers, and blogs. And Amit, thank you again for taking time and joining us today. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you all.
We have Justin Stayrook. Justin spearheads Bond's industry-leading customer experience practice of consulting, implementation, and ongoing services that encompasses industry-leading content and experience marketing technologies. He works with many of our partners such as Adobe, Salesforce, and SAP. Justin is focused on data-driven solutions that provide optimized and personalized experiences across industry's leading technologies. Justin has nearly 20 years of experience as a consultant and business leader. And Justin is joining us from Southern California. Justin, thank you for taking time this morning.
Thank you, Rahul. Good to see everyone.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So very quickly on the agenda, the way we have set up today, we have around 60 minutes. We're going to start with Scott, a very brief keynote. Scott has some slides that he's gonna run us through. Then we have Amit taking over from Scott and spend about another 10-15 minutes talking about the full lifetime and the value of customer and the CLTV as a metric. And then we will get into a panel discussion where Justin will also be on the panel. We'll have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions from the audience standpoint, please feel free to put that on the chat box. what I'll do in the last 5-6 minutes, I'll pick up some of the top questions from the chat box and ask the audience. So without any further ado, Scott, all yours. Thank you.
Great. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Yes? All right. Fantastic. Hey,
Yes.
I have to tell you, Tech Mahindra, thank you so much for having me here to talk about one of my favorite topics. I'm genuine when I say this. I've been preaching customer lifetime value for many, many years, at least 10 now, especially to marketers who get focused on immediate ROI of that campaign, whichever one it is that has their name on it. So let's dive in. I've got quite a bit of data here. I'll throw at you just at the beginning, just to give you a bit of a status of where we are right now in terms of omnichannel retail. In 2024, Forrester predicts that 72% of US retail sales will still take place offline. So while lots of us have heard about the shift to digital, let's all stay grounded in the fact that consumers are still going to be going back into stores. So we need to make sure that lifetime value accommodates that touch point as well. Also, US retail mobile commerce will grow 17% annually through 2024. And this is quite a jump from where we were before. So in addition to store being a focus area, mobile is also another focus area related to customer lifetime value. And over the course of the past year and a half, I know we've all experienced it and been challenged with many of the scenarios that COVID-19 has brought to the surface for us. Shopper behaviors and expectations have changed over this last year and a half because of the experiences that they have had. So let's go through a few quick ones here. First of all, customers are now buying directly more from brands. 45% of online adults are interested in buying directly from brands. And part of that is because 24% have been frustrated with their Prime membership, largely due to supply chain problems and deliverability window problems. So customers are buying more directly from brands. Curbside and alternative pickup options have become a prevalent use case. Curbside pickup is the #1 fulfillment option people say they'll use after the pandemic has passed. Others want in-store pickup, and locker pickups are also making headway, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Also, contactless payments. Now, I know this one seems like a no-brainer. As soon as COVID hit, nobody wanted to touch anything, right? So any method that we can provide to give that consumer a way to check out without having to touch equipment, another great use case there. And 12% of customers say they've used contactless payments for the first time over the past year and a half. And 36% of those are satisfied with those contactless payments. So it seems to be working and doing well for the consumer as well. Number 4, consumers are now planning shopping for efficiency and safety. And this is something that really didn't happen prior to COVID-19. So consumers now want to know if the stores are busy, and they want to plan store pickups for minimal wait times. The number 2 fulfillment option right now is scheduling time slots for deliverability. So that means basically predictability is key because consumers want to plan their shopping with you. So we got to know what's in stock, we got to know when it's available, and we got to know when we can get it out to the customer for pickup. 5, financial distress and sale shopping. Right now, across the globe, we still have fairly high unemployment. 17% of consumers have had salaries or wages reduced in the past year and a half. And right now in the US, we're at the lowest labor participation rate that we've seen since the mid-70s when women joined the workforce en masse. It's quite a conundrum. So folks are shopping, shopping bargains, shopping sales. They're very, very clued in right now to price as a motivator. And number 6, engaging via mobile. This has really taken off over the last year and a half. We'll talk more about this as well. But mobile usage and use cases are expanding both online and in the store. And this is a major area of opportunity. So let's talk just really quickly about what consumers are actually doing in relationship to omnichannel on their mobile device. Some of these are going to be pretty standard, things that we have already done, accomplished, and are executing today. So being able to look up hours and directions to the nearest store, or check for discounts. Those are, very common use cases. But check out the use cases in the green. Before shopping, a couple new ones that have just popped up. So texting the store upon arrival for curbside or other pickup services. And this really involves all of that post-purchase interaction that happens related to a click and collect order that came in through digital. So lots of new communication opportunities there. And before shopping, they're actually also looking up average wait time at checkout. Consumers don't want to go to the store if they know it's going to be busy. They're still trying to avoid crowds. While in the store, they're using shopping lists more frequently so that they know where products are within the store, especially large format stores. And they're also scanning items in the store for more information to get more details around price and product information. And then after shopping, there's a few more that are a bit unique. Completing self-checkout on phone, and whether that's scan and go, functionality within the store, or completely autonomous checkout like you see with Amazon Go. Lots of new use cases there. And applying coupons and or gift cards from a digital wallets. Digital wallet usage has also been growing significantly over this past year and a half, and we expect that to continue. So consumers are using mobile in many new ways, and they've been exposed to a lot of great experiences and some bad ones over the past year and a half. Those good experiences raise the bar for businesses out there. And it doesn't matter what vertical they're in. If they had an easy checkout with a travel agency, they expect an easy checkout with a retail provider. So, just keep that in mind. They've been exposed to more digital experiences. They expect more from you right now. So what are businesses doing to actually accommodate this new shift, right? These new expectations. When we ask business leaders where they're investing their money in 2021, these are three of the top answers that we received. 28% are adding or improving mobile services. And we talked about that prevalence of mobile. We'll talk more about it too. 24% are improving store and branch customer experiences, and 21% are improving omni-channel and cross-channel experiences. Now, what's really interesting, if you look across these three, they're fairly similar, right? And as I mentioned, these are within the top five. These are three of the top five expenditures for businesses this year related to retail. What's very interesting is that mobile just came into lead of these three. So this feature here of 28% of businesses spending on mobile services has now outpaced the dollars they're spending in improving store and branch or improving omni-channel. And we all know that improving mobile improves both the branch experience and omni-channel efficiency. So we're going to focus on mobile like lots of businesses are doing this year. So in focusing on mobile, I'm going to dive down and get a bit tactical. And we're going to talk about digital wins to drive conversion and loyalty, right? And conversion with a larger AOV boosts customer lifetime value, and bringing them back for more because of an efficient experience also boosts and supports customer lifetime value. Now, I do want to mention that customer lifetime value is not singularly about a loyalty program, right? It is about literally every touch point that you have with a consumer, whether digital or in person or on the phone. So let's take into account every touch point you have with them. And the goal is really to make sure we're polishing every one of those touch points to satisfy the customer need. All right, so let's dive down. One of the things I'm highly recommending, if you're not busy doing this already, is to prioritize that mobile shopper. In 2020, US mobile retail grew by 36% compared with 2019. And that is a very significant change. Some of the use cases that we're seeing right now related to mobile shopping and omnichannel are wayfinding in store, which is giving the customer a way to find those products within the store along with stock status. Real-time local inventory, right? We have to know, especially if you're doing omni-channel, if you're going to take a digital order, we have to know what is actually in that store where it's going to be fulfilled from, so we can provide predictable windows to the consumer. Omni-channel carts, this has been a big one as well. Basically, any digital touch point needs to be talking to the other one, right? So if a customer is on their phone building a list, and then they go to the website at work, they need to be able to pull that list up very quickly and easily. And then when they get in the store, any changes they made on desktop or mobile appears when they pull their phone out in the store. We have to have omni-channel carts. Digital wallets also coming to prevalence. We've seen some real traction prior to COVID-19, and COVID-19 actually really just boosted that usage. Everything from coupons to payments are stored in these digital wallets, and we're seeing a lot of new usage of these. Alternate payment methods. This one we've known in e-commerce for quite some time, and now it's making its way into the store environment as well, especially as mobile takes prevalence in terms of interactions in the store. And then list creation and management. And this is a little bit more for larger format stores, but imagine consumers basically want to be able to get in your store and get out of that store as quickly as possible because they are still concerned about those safety factors. So making a list and showing them where those items are highly beneficial. And I do want to mention, see in the top right corner that PWAs are hot in 2021. Okay, I have a colleague who does what's hot or not report each year at Forrester. And what he does is he goes out and he interviews a ton of retailers to find out exactly what they're spending money on so that we can figure out what's hot, what's middle, and what's hype related to all of the stories we hear in digital marketing. And PWAs are hot in 2021 in the top 5. Okay, lots of folks are developing mobile, and in fact, this year I was this close to calling this year the year of the retailer app. So pay attention to mobile. We've got to focus in. Another use. So one of the big use cases with mobile is autonomous checkout. Over half of U.S. online adults have used their own device to check out or are interested in doing so. We've got a few examples here. And so this includes, autonomous checkout, really scan and go, as well as things like Amazon Go, where you're just walking out, and smart carts like we see at Kroger, things like that. We also want to be fueling our personalization with zero-party data. Okay, again, hot in 2021, personalization in the top 5 in terms of expenditures. And what we need to do, because we're losing third-party data sources and a lot of new privacy practices or privacy regulations are taking place, we have to focus on zero and first-party data. Here's an example from ASOS where they are basically allowing the customer to choose through, thereby designating what their preferences are. And after they submit the brands, then they get basically a customized collection of products. So one way to fuel personalization with zero-party data, ask the customers, put it in front of them. And another thing that we're seeing a lot more of, which is fairly new in the market, is guest personalization with first-party data. Now, even if you don't know anything about that customer, we still want to try to be targeting them to get them to convert, to get them to come back and buy again. And you can do this even with your guests. There's a couple examples here, both from Dick's Sporting Goods. On the left, you'll see they're personalizing by geography, even during that first guest session. And then after that guest clicks through just a few windows, that clickstream personalization actually takes place and starts to customize the experience based on those clicks and that interaction. So, free your mind. We've got to cut out those third-party data sources. They're going to be problematic in the future. So we've got to dial in on first-party and zero-party data for personalization. Can you do it? Absolutely. Will you need help? Maybe you might need help. And that's what great partners are for, right? And again, personalization is hot in 2021. We're going to go one step farther with personalization. We're not seeing a ton of this yet, but this is absolutely the next step in personalization, not just personalizing the experience, but personalizing the product itself. Right. And there's a couple great examples here. One from M&M's where you can customize the actual print on the M&M, and a second one here from Oreos, which I had just discovered as a part of this process. And this is a fantastic way to show product personalization. Check out the Oreo site. Very, very streamlined, super efficient, and a really, really impactful way to drive personalization all the way down to the product. And one last thing, because we've talked about a lot of technology solutions, one last thing is it's really, really important to just focus on the consumer need, right? Personalization doesn't always require a deep technical solution. Sometimes it's as simple as just asking your customers what they want and then giving it to them in a meaningful way. So thank you. With that, I want to pass it back over to Rahul as Amit gets ready to present. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott. Absolutely fascinating data that you presented. I think in the last 18 months, just going over your presentation, the last 18 months, many of the things that we've been thinking are futuristic just before that have become relatively common these days. Fully automated stores, autonomous carts,
Right.
curbside pickup. I don't think there's anything more convenient than that. Buying
Right.
directly from brands, and it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you. We have a lot of questions, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the panel. So Amit, with that, I know it's all to you, talking about the customer lifetime value to be more specific. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Rahul. Rahul, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Amit. Yes, you're loud and
Okay.
clear. We can see the screen.
Okay. Great. So, guys, once again, welcome to the webinar, and I'm quite excited as part of the speaker. So, let me share another perspective. Scott was talking about that what are the different aspects, and I will primarily talk about that what is the entire journey in this CLTV and how we bring the differentiation. Now, if I look at the broadly the retail and consumer good business unit where we are part of the that unit. So we look at primarily all our solutions or even our project execution primarily from two lenses. One is from the outcome basis, which is you can see here on the screen, whether it is all about the customer experience, whether it is about reducing cost or improving efficiency or so on. And second perspective is that whether my solutions are they future ready, are they smart enough, are they intelligent enough, or even are they scalable and robust also. Now, with that objective keeping in mind, we have developed few offering, which we call it gold offering, gold series. And out of those gold offering, one of the gold offering, which is customer lifetime value, which I'll be talking about. Now, like Rahul mentioned that CLTV, we all know about the concept which is in the market for last few decades. So basically, it is all about as a brand owner, as a customer, as a company, how can I monetize the value, maximum value from my customer during the lifetime where he or she is associated with my product or with my brand. Now, the main differentiation as a Tech Mahindra, what we bring to the table is stitching the entire journey. I'll be talking about the journey maybe in a couple of slides. But if we look at the journey, typically start from identifying my potential customer, who they are, what they actually looking for, and how can I bring them to my ecosystem, and eventually how can I retain them, and eventually how can they become my loyal customer. And like I mentioned earlier, we look at our offering primarily in the lenses from the outcome, and that's where we look at in terms of connecting the entire story under the umbrella of CLTV, which is starting from identify my customer and which goes to the end objective of providing the wow experience, which is the personalization. Now let's look at what are some of the industry experiences, industry best examples under the umbrella of CLTV. There are many of them here. In fact, many more beyond what you can see here. But I'll pick up a couple of them. Now, when we are talking about CLTV, I mean, obviously we are talking about all about the customer. So whether can I improve my customer churn rate? And one of the example, I would say leading example in front of us is uh, Netflix. Netflix, what they did is, so they were facing a challenge where the customer were not sticking or getting the, I would say, sticking to their platform because they had to wait for the next series or next movie. And you'll be surprised to know that by leveraging the concept of CLTV, that's how the concept of OTT platform came into the existence. And they looked at that eventually customer was not waiting back because they were getting the series on the web and on the mailbox. And by continuous consumer engagement, eventually they reduced the churn rate by just by 4%, which is quite remarkable. Similarly, if I look at one of the most, I would say, primitive ways to increase my customer lifetime value as a brand owner is how can I improve my customer satisfaction rate? And that's what Starbucks has done that. You'll be surprised to know that Starbucks, where they looked at various market studies under the concept of CLTV, and eventually their customer satisfaction rate is as high as around almost 90%. And another interesting statistic, let me share here. Very recently, I came across through some unconfirmed resources The membership card, which provide different loyalty points, rewards, and for the Starbucks, today they have almost couple of $1 billion lying there, cash. And that is the power of concept called CLTV, where you create the brand, and eventually Starbucks, their value few years back for per customer, it was almost $15,000. That is quite surprising. So there are so many other examples. Let me pick up maybe one more. For example, let's say if I look at Crocs. Crocs marketing team, they were given a task that can I improve my profitability by not relying too much on my promotions or my discounts. I mean, all of us know that's where it eats my margin, right? So they did the customer segmentation, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But one of the very powerful way to increase the CLTV. So they looked at the different customer segmentation, looked primarily identified two set of customers. One who were more likely to churn out. Second, who were very least price sensitive. They went aggressively across all channels, and eventually they put up the policy of no discounts. And you won't believe it. By doing that, they increased their revenue almost two times with those set of customers. Another very interesting aspect, let me share here. How many of us, as a brand owner, as a product owner, like those customers who return your products? Most of us would say no, including myself. I mean, in my past experience when I was running my own venture, I used to look at that why some of my customers, around 6 to 7% of them, they are returning the goods. And that's what the challenge Zappos was facing. And when they did the again similar approach, they looked at the customer segmentation, and you'll be surprised to know that they found out that these customers who are returning the products, they are the highly profitable customers. These are the customers who are spending more time with my brand. These are the customers who are giving more profit to me. I should do definitely something for them. And obviously to reduce that return rate just by simply changing the policy of return policy. That's how they increase the customer satisfaction rate. So 1 year you can return the product, two-way free airfare, free fare charges for returning, and no charge for the returning the product. And eventually they increase that customer satisfaction rate, and specifically those highly profitable customers. You can see here only 6 examples, but I'm sure all of you will agree that there are so many examples in front of us, and especially now post-pandemic, CLTV has become such a, I would say, need of the hour where companies are looking at this concept and increasing the value, overall value proposition. Now, let's go one step further. If I look at the overall journey, which I was talking about some time back, under the concept of CLTV, which typically start with identifying my customer. Now, you'll be surprised to know that hardly just less than 20% of the companies they put up efforts where customers are associated with them throughout this journey. Throughout this journey. Similarly, if I look at the next step comes where I do some set of activities online and offline, primarily I would say let's say online digital marketing, where customers are aware about my product, my services. And by the way, this is one of the most important step, or I would say stage, where more than 70 to 80% of my effort is there. My money is lying here, is being spent here. So definitely my customer has to be aware of about what actually I'm offering on the table. If I look at the acquisition part, which is the next stage, now this is the stage where customers they come into my ecosystem, and you'll be surprised to know on an average it takes 5 to 25 times more than monetizing the existing customer. And that's where I would say the existence of this concept called customer lifetime value. Simple. It's a very simple, powerful concept in front of us. So once my customer comes into my ecosystem, can I look at the segmenting them? And to me, if you ask me in this entire journey, this is the most powerful stage, especially after customer comes into my ecosystem, so that I do some set of activity, they retain in my ecosystem, they become loyal, and eventually I provide them wow experience. And if I look at the segmentation part, specifically like I've already spoken about a couple of examples, 80% of my profit will come by 20% of my customers. So that's where I need to put up my focus, and that's where money lies on the table. Similarly, if I look at the next stage, which is retention. So once my customer is doing multiple purchases with me, I can confidently say that okay, they are retaining with my ecosystem. And another step comes into the picture where I say that the customers are loyal to me, and on an average, it takes around 8 to 10 times more basket size for a loyal customer compared to what they do in the first time purchase. So that is the power of when you get the loyal customer. And last but not least, in terms of providing the wow experience on personalization. As per a different market study, around 70 to 75% of customers, they go away, or they, I would say, the churn rate happens because the brands are indifferent to them. Now, if I look at in terms of that how this entire journey, what is the impact happening globally within the retail and consumer goods ecosystem, the boxes which you can see here in the red color under these different stages, that's where our experience says that primarily a lot of action happening within the company. I'll give you a couple of examples. Sometime back, we were talking to one of the leading, I would say, grocery retailer in the South Africa market, and they looked at in terms of customer segmentation, and eventually they found out that my female customers are more shopper compared to male customer, and even particularly age bracket, and that's where they fine tune their loyalty program and they increase the overall value proposition. See, we saw there was an era of B2B where business was happening. Then definitely we saw the era of rise of B2C. I mean, so many examples in front of us, especially during and I would say even post-pandemic. For example, Nike. Nike clocking almost $12+ billion and a part of Nike direct to consumer part strategy. Similarly, if I look at, for example, the exponential growth of companies like ASOS or Boohoo, which are 100% online retailer. In fact, very recently, just few days back, you might have read that Shein, which is only online retailer, the largest valuation by 21 billion euro, where they are primarily focused on the online part. That is the B2C part. The question comes in front of us that what next? And if you ask me to me, this is the primarily phase which is happening, primarily loyalty and personalization. And if you ask me in my own words, the model will be B2O, B2B, then B2C, and then future will be B2O, which is brand to one. So where there's a connect from brand to end consumer people like you or me. And if you ask me, I have to define this entire paradigm shift. I will look at price to personalization. I will look at execution to experience. I will look at in terms of my conversion rate to my consumer. That's where my focus is. And in fact, if you ask me, the next coming paradigm shift will be happening from execution to experience to environment. So there's a major paradigm shift happening in this entire journey from, I would say, left to right, and primarily on the retention and loyalty because of obvious reason in terms of the retention, customer wallet share, and so on. Now, moving further, if I look at that, what exactly from Tech Mahindra we bring to the table, I would look at primarily there are three buckets. One bucket is where Tech Mahindra, we have our own IP, our own solutions, platforms. That is one bucket. Second, we have extended family members. Most of the logos you can see here, they are part of the Tech Mahindra ecosystem, whether it is about Bone, or whether it is about Comviva, whether it is about Factorial, and so on. And last but not least, today at the business unit, we are working with more than 30 different startups where we bring the very niche solutions specifically for the retail and consumer goods. And by the way, right now I'm talking about only under the concept of customer lifetime value. So whether it is about my consumer engagement, whether it is about my customer segmentation, consumer segmentation, whether it is about retention, whether it is about loyalty part, whether it is about personalization, so all these area, and that's where, like I mentioned in the start, the kind of differentiation we bring to the table in terms of well connected the entire journey starting from identifying my potential customer, eventually going to the personalization. And with that, last but not least, let me give you a couple of examples. This is a partial list which you can see here, where we have delivered value under the concept of customer lifetime value. Uh, I'll pick up just one example in the interest of time, which is in this case PepsiCo. So the challenge was that how can I connect directly to my consumer? Though PepsiCo, we all know it's a B2B company, it's a primarily, right? But like I mentioned, there's a major paradigm shift happening. And we all know about the two websites were launched in the peak of the pandemic last year by PepsiCo, where you put up the snacks in the basket and they will do delivery free of cost the moment you touch $50 basket size, right? So in this case, what we did is we helped PepsiCo by connecting more than 1.6 million consumers within a span of 8 weeks. And we help client by reaching their sales target in just 70% of the time allocated for the entire execution. And the most beautiful part about this was the entire execution was done. It's an outcome-based model where client has paid $0 at the start of the engagement, which means whatever outcome was promised, they were delivered, and accordingly, commercial engagement comes into the picture. The examples which you see here, they are part of under CLTV journey, whether, like I mentioned earlier, whether it is about the marketing automation, whether it is about customer engagement, whether it is about the customer experience, whether it is about even the personalization. So many examples where we have delivered value to our clients across the globe. With that note, I'll take a pause and I'll hand over to my colleague Rahul, and looking forward for the question and answers. Rahul, over to you.
Amit, thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating. Many of the times when we look at customer lifetime value, sometimes we kind of miss all the different facets that go underneath it, from the time of identifying to bringing royalty to building personalization. And many of the examples that you've shown, really relevant right in this time of the world. So with that, let me kind of step back a bit and Justin, welcome back to the panel.
Thank you.
I will. What I was thinking is we have about 20 minutes left. So 15 minutes. There are some questions that I have that I want to kind of bring in some of the topics that you said, with a little bit more detail, and then I will let the last 5 minutes. We can pick up any of the audience questions. So let me start with this. I think Scott, Amit, again, thank you for that presentation. I think many of the contextually right now in the last 18 months, things have absolutely changed many of the facets of our modern life, right? In terms of how we shop or how we buy products. We have gotten used to new habits. There are new routines. There's a fundamental shift in shopping behavior, right? So these last 18 months and going into the future, how are you seeing the adoption of the customer lifetime value, both as a strategy, as a metric? How are enterprises, are they redefining the metrics, or they relooking at certain facets of CLTV with more interest? Can you paint some color on that? Maybe, Scott, you wanna start? I'll start with you, and then we can go with Amit and Justin.
Yeah, sure thing. What I'm hearing here at Forrester, because we work with a lot of these retailers and the vendors both, right? What we hear a lot of is a larger focus on loyalty strategies as a whole, right? Not like a lot of marketers, when they think about, okay, when you say customer lifetime value, they think loyalty, and then the next step is loyalty programs, right? That's kind of like the old school way of thinking about lifetime value. But lifetime value encompasses so much more than that most progressive retailers out there are thinking about loyalty strategies, and loyalty strategies involves things like personalized promotions, engagement in store, simple post-purchase transaction messaging. There's so many different ways. Literally every touch point we have with them can cultivate our next touch with that customer, right? And even just simple things like deep product information helps reduce returns, right? Like there are so many ways, or great search on site powered by AI and machine learning helps them find the product easier. There's just so many ways that we can make that process more efficient for them, because the number one reason that folks shop digitally is for convenience. So as long as you're solving problems of convenience for your customer, in my mind, that will always be part of your loyalty strategy. And just, don't think too narrow focused about loyalty programs specifically. And yes, they absolutely still have a part. It's just a larger ecosystem of interaction with the customer than just a program itself.
Yeah, I can add a little bit on that. I was quiet while you guys are presenting, but it's awesome to see people who are like-minded, and Scott and Amit, you guys speak a lot of the same things I speak to all our clients about, in enterprise fashion, things like that. And when I think of customer lifetime value, I think of it as is sort of keeping score, right? Is that if you have good behaviors and you're interacting with your customers in the right way, that score increases. If your goal is just to increase that score, you may be short-sighted, as Scott mentioned, and going too narrow into that. But every touch point that you have with a potential customer, offline, online, whatever, will eventually bump up that customer lifetime value score. So I think it's very important to take a wide view of any topics, from technology through to in-store behavior. All these kinds of things are very important. And we like to, when we start out and we start onboarding new customers at Born, what we like to really focus on first is customer data. There's a lot of really interesting technologies that have come into market that really have democratized the use of customer data. It used to be a thing that was only available to mega brands who had millions of dollars to spend a year. Within a couple of months, we can stand up CDP platforms, which are wildly popular with a lot of retail brands, and really start to gather information that helps you, progress that personalization to the next level.
Yeah, and Justin, I have to jump in there too. Absolutely, one of the key building blocks for a loyalty strategy is single view of the customer. You have to have single view of the customer. If you don't have that, you have to start there, right? It starts with data, identifying the use cases, and all of those touch points have to talk to one another at some point. So that data has to communicate. So in my mind, it's like the end of point solutions. You've got to get it integrated, and you may need a partner to do it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Amit, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So see, couple of points I want to highlight here, Rahul. So quickly, answer to your question in terms of last 18 months, definitely there's a major impact, major paradigm shift happened if I look at the CLTV as a concept. Because there are company, like I spoke about a couple of examples, in terms of where they are reaching directly to consumers, people like you or me. I'll give you another small data point. ITC, food division in India, in the last 18 months, they have launched more than 70 brands. And the focus of those brands primarily on health, hygiene, safety, consumers, environment. And that's where, if you look at, core themes are in front of any business today. Second point is, if I look at loyalty program like Scott's mentioned, I mean, let's agree that most of the consumer goods and retail companies, they have that. But my perspective is that, to me, most of the cases, it looks like a legacy system, like where you buy X dollar, you get Y dollar the moment you reach to a threshold level. Those are the gone days. Is my loyalty program future ready? Which means, for example, has I enabled AI/ML in my loyalty program? Has I looked at the loyalty program integrated with my mobile wallet? Has I looked at my loyalty program in terms of omni-channel, omni-brand, omni-geography, even I'm looking to that level. And last but not least, it's not about getting just one transaction at the point of sale. It's all about from which particular channel my consumer, they are coming into my ecosystem. And can I look at more structured and contextualized loyalty program so that eventually it leads me to the personalization. That's where more profitable customers are there, and that's where money lies on the table.
No, 100%, Amit. Yeah, 100%. I think a couple of themes that kind of came out from this particular topic, right? Justin and Scott definitely spoke about customer data platform. Data is being critical, and Amit absolutely talking about personalization. I mean, at least in the last year and a half or so, all of us ended up digitally, engaging with many of our brands. So there's a lot of data that was getting generated. But then now we see that we're going back to stores. In-store shopping has picked up pace. So if you look at increasing the customer lifetime value, with an in-store experience, right? What are you seeing the new themes that are coming out, and how are retailers and even the brands engaging the in-store experience to improve the CLTV?
Yeah, I mean, sorry guys, I don't
No, just of course.
That's a really interesting topic. I'm sure Scott and Amit both have comments on it as well. But when you're talking about, as Scott mentioned, creating a single view of the customer, you can't have that without having some sort of data from the in-store experience also, right? The in-store, Scott had a really awesome statistic. I think it was 72% of purchases are still going to happen in the store. So there's been massive advancements in point of sale systems in the last 5 or 6 years that have really allowed for that data to be piped into customer data platforms to create that single view. There's a lot of I won't go into the details of that, but there's a lot of really interesting startups that have come up, the ones you've heard of, obviously, like Square and such. But there are, I think, because of opportunities and existing businesses, there are quite a few that have really focused on point of sale being a pipe for customer data. And that's helped store associates really understand guest needs when they come in. It's really helped link together things like call center with store experience as well. If someone's calling about about it and complaining about a product, and they walk into the store, it would be great to know that, to provide that. And all those things help improve customer lifetime value over time.
Yeah, I agree. And digital can enable retailers to service customers in ways that really were previously impossible, right? Because of that information, because of that data that can now be placed into the associates' hands, they know so much more about the customer and can service them in a new way. There's so many other things we can do in store to drive lifetime value, and it's really all about a nice, convenient experience and solving your customers' problems, right? A few of the areas that I'll just list would be like mobile app technology. Folks are using mobile in store far more than ever. Scanning tech, both for product info and to check out, digital wallets and payments, and even autonomous checkout, right? Smart carts or just walk out. But for all of these, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the shopper and solve their needs, right? We've got to think through, as Amit was saying, think through that entire customer journey, identify those pain points, and then solve those with tech.
No, of course.
Sorry, Rahul. So my perspective is there are 3 different, I would say, role play for stores, especially now in terms of CLTV. One, now those are the golden days when they are only the transaction centers. They are more of an immersive experience center, number one. Number two, with the rise of online model, definitely they are also playing a role of a fulfillment center. And last but not least, that is a place where you can connect with the consumers, even physically, and that's where you can bring personalization into the picture in terms of knowing more about them. So those are the 3 more important roles which is changing, especially post-pandemic, in the store ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. I think again, right, just looking at from a higher level view, couple of things that you are pointing in is some of the digital data acquisition devices, either it's the point of sale or the mobile app, right? Getting information from that, integrating it into the customer data platforms, and creating that personalization with an in-store experience is what continues to drive the customer lifetime value. I want to touch upon a little bit on the mobile app, a little bit there, right? I know, Scott, you spoke about how customers want to directly engage with the brands, right? But most of the shoppers, including me, for example, when I'm in a store, I have the retailer app, and I'm not necessarily having the app that the brands themselves have, right? How are brands engaging in this concept of directly engaging a B2C mindset, right? How are they using mobile app as a strategy? How are they exciting the customers to use that app, right? Many of the times, even mobile telco provider app, they've been asking us to kind of download these apps. Many of the customers have been a little bit hesitant to do it for whatever the reason it is, right? What's going on? How can brands continue to build their strategy using mobile apps, right? For all of you, yeah.
I can start. So one thing I would encourage is a product finder. The first brand I saw do this was Neutrogena, and this was probably 10, 12 years ago. So it was a ways back, but a product finder. So if I go to Pepsi.com or let's say Neutrogena.com and I want to say, hey, show me where this product is in a store near me, highly beneficial for the consumer. I would say that's one big piece. Another piece also, because I focus on the grocery vertical and they have trade dollars where CPG companies basically pay to be on the shelf. We're seeing quite a bit there in terms of mobile opportunities for brands to basically inject content or messaging into the retailer's web or mobile app experience. So in terms of CPG and grocery, there's some avenues there as well. Justin and Amit might have some more examples here too.
Yeah, I think you spoke about it a little bit in your presentation, Scott, but I think I almost consider the use of mobile in a physical environment a new channel. It's been being developed, right? So when we think about channels, we typically think about email, SMS, point of sale, these kinds of things. But the idea of using a mobile device while inside of a physical location is really picking up steam. And I think being able to address that in the right ways. Now, I've seen a lot of bad attempts at that, and also some good ones. So I think there's a lot of experimentation going on in that area where you can try to determine what would be best for your customer in a certain situation. That'll differ in the the specific vertical. I think restaurants have a certain way of looking at it. I think grocers probably have a certain way of looking at it. I think fashion retailers probably have a certain way of looking at it. But that's a really interesting space that I think is going to really grow more and more. So I think with any, like Rahul, you asked, how do you get people to use apps? I think the simple answer is create value for using those apps. And as long as you do that, customers are willing to interact with you through that channel. They're willing to give up personal data many times. And a lot of the Apple is starting to put restrictions and warnings on using data. So the landscape is changing quite a bit. So the more value you create, the more willingness that consumers are going to be able to interact with your brand and give up that really valuable data of theirs.
See, my perspective is definitely mobile is very critical channel. I would look at the three different most important attributes from the consumer point of view. Number one, today consumers don't have time. They need information on the go, and mobile is your answer, definitely. Second, they are very impatient. They won't wait that, okay, you will send me information tomorrow, I'll get that, accordingly I will go for purchase. Like example we saw in case of Netflix, which I was talking about. So definitely I need it right now. And third is again, going back to the personalization. Can you give me personalized recommendation based on my size? What fashion should I look for based on my preferences, whether it is about brand, whether it is about environment, whether it is about ingredients? Can you tell me what all, let's say, food item I should pick up? So that's where my mobile is definitely very important and critical channel for me if I have to grow across the channel. No doubt about it.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Amit. I think it does resonate, right? Even us being consumers in many of these brands, it does make sense that mobile allows us to be a lot more personalized and a lot more data driven, right?
Yeah.
But just to that specific point, right? We all spoke quite a bit on loyalty, personalization to an extent. But can you spend a little bit on the acquisition cycle of the customer lifetime value, right? How are retailers innovating in that space, or how are CPG companies innovating in that space? What are you seeing? Some of the new things that are coming up on the acquisition cycle of the CLTV.
So first, I'll take this, guys. first is set the proper and clear expectations with the consumer from the start, right? So make sure you're attracting folks who have or who want what you have, and not trying to fit what you have into someone else's into world. That doesn't work. So set proper and clear expectations. One of the ways that you can do that works really well, which is part of marketing automation, is to use lookalike audiences of your loyal customers to attract the right shoppers in your acquisition cycles, right? So not every customer is equal and not every sale is equal. So you really want to be fishing for the folks who look like your most loyal customers. And we have to basically stop thinking in terms of campaign success alone and immediate ROI and really focus on lifetime value. So most loyal customers, go find some more of those is essentially the task, or at least a great starting point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the top of the funnel can be a messy place. There's a lot of mistakes that are made there that really hurt your brand, because, I think there's still a lot of misconceptions about what works in terms of campaigning. So, coming back to CDP platforms, and there, Scott mentioned earlier, there's a movement to start moving away from third-party data, which has always been very important, in the acquisition cycles. But when you have good data on your existing customers and your loyal customers, you can really do a lot to refine the methods that you're using in the acquisition cycles to make sure you're not, over campaigning, under campaigning, being more reactive to, potential customers, understanding cross device interactions, without, the creepiness factor that sometimes crawls in, to hyper personalization. So I think, again, we've really doubled down on the fact that, you have to make all of this work, from end to end. That customer data platform is extremely important, and that can come in all different shapes and sizes and flavors depending on your industry and focus. But it's really the first towards making that work as well.
Right, Justin. In fact, I'll put it in this way. So typically, if you go to any standard e-commerce platform, and let's say you buy a T-shirt, I'm sure all of us will experience that, and it will say that, okay, those who bought this product, they bought this also. Cross-selling, right? I'm talking about, can you give me recommendation based on my past experience? The recommendation based on not other purchase, based on what I purchased last time. That's where I'm talking about the personalization. Number one. Number two, like we all know, there's plenty of data across channels, but we need to get the unified view of my customer to get all these things which we are talking about, whether it is about loyalty program, whether it's about personalization, whether it is about increasing eventually the profitability. And in fact, one of the example I tell you, in Tech Mahindra, we have one of the solutions where it will look at the entire customer journey across different channels, and it will give you the unified view of my end consumers. And case in point, I mean, I won't go much deeper, but we have acquired 30 customers within last 10 months for that solutions. There are happy customers across the globe, whether it is Asia Pacific or western part of the world or even Middle East or India. So that means I think we are moving in the right direction from that perspective. And that's what companies are looking at in terms of getting the unified view of their customer so that the acquisition journey and even the wallet share increase over a period of time.
Hey, let me throw one more thing in there related to CDPs. One of the other, so CDP is not just for marketing activities, right? But it's probably going to originate in marketing or maybe even the IT or a data group, right? But it's not just for marketing. It's a place to gather all that data, to derive insights, and then use those insights throughout the organization, right? So a simple use case would be if you've derived intent from someone doing a search on your site, when they call customer service, the customer service agent should know what that intent was when they interacted with your site prior to now. They should know if you've walked in to the store with your phone in the last week, those kinds of factors. So if you're trying to get traction within your organization to support a CDP in terms of a business case, think through the org and how you could make both the customer experience and the employee experience better using that data. Big leverage there.
Thank you. Thanks, all. I think absolutely fascinating. Again, this is one of those topics which I think with such a passionate panel, I think this can go on for a little bit longer, but we have just a couple of minutes left. So let me kind of throw one last question at you, and this is coming from the audience. So the question is more on AI and machine learning. I think Scott, you spoke about a little bit on that in your presentation and how retailers are using this technology to personalize. But just high level, what are some of the areas where retailers have to be a little bit more careful when they start implementing this technology? Brand new, there are a lot of questions around ethics, morals that we keep hearing from using this data. Just high level for all three of you, what should be the more careful areas within this machine learning technologies that retailers should be using?
I think this is a great question, and it's very normal to have some fear of AI because it's an unknown, right? Traditionally, it is this black box thing that's happening in the background that gives you results or gives you something to choose from. I need to let you know that it's actually evolved so much more, even just in the past 2-3 years, that the black box is really not so much a black box anymore. The black box is making the calculations, doing predictions, but it's democratizing that power by presenting information and choices to the business users. It's not all automatic, right? So imagine like the first time you get in a self-driving car and you push autopilot, you're going to want to have your hands pretty close to the wheel. But after you get a little bit of experience with it, you start to see, wow, this car makes decisions faster than I can as a human being. You'll start to relax and let AI take the wheel, right? And then you're just going to tell it where to go and it'll get you there. And it's very much the same way that I'm seeing in terms of marketing and retailing, engaging a customer using AI. Is at first you're going to test your way in, right? And then when those results come out and they're that much better and you get to put your name on it, it's not going to be long before you're wondering where else can we use this technology.
Yeah. Well, Scott, you stole my self-driving car analogy. I always use that.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, I think the simplest use case is, offer management, providing the best offers at the right time in the right place is a great, first step for using, AI and ML. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, my personal opinion is, given the state of technology, and I'm far from a PhD in this area, but you could run an entire marketing program from top of the funnel through conversion and loyalty, just letting the machines have a. Now the interesting part is, and again, this is using Scott's analogy, is that what I see more people do is really put some buffer into that, right? So rather than letting the AI and ML react, in real time, perhaps, like, maybe you put a 12-hour delay or something like that, because that feels more natural. It feels like a more natural conversation that you would have with, with a brand, with an employee, with a, customer service agent, things like that. So I think that's the hard part, is figuring out how much, customers expect, because when the speed of marketing and speed of sales and the speed of loyalty, transactions are moving more quickly than what humans move, then that creates a sense of, distrust. So I think as long as you understand the, the highest capabilities, it's much easier to dial it back and get into a comfort area that you see, responses. There have been cases where there's been, too much personalization, too much direct interaction, too much, AI and ML that have caused, small problems. There's been a few articles that have been out there over the years, but it's a tremendous technology, and, finding it's a really simple use case, is a good way to get started.
Perfect. Amit, you got any last parting thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. See, no doubt about it. AI ML will be, I would say, those are the golden days when good to have. It's a must to have choice. I mean, you don't have any choice in terms of adopting the technology. See, how I look at it specifically, that can, by leveraging AI ML, I can move, like I mentioned earlier, my loyalty program to more personalized experience. And again, going back to the emerging model which I was talking about, B2O model, brand to one. So that's where, again, I'm saying the money lies on the table, more profitable customers are. And if you can give that wow experience, you are beating the competition. And you can do that by AI/ML and many other such technologies, which has to be there in place. And the underneath layer is technology where data is there. Good thing is that we have data. Now we have to get the insights and go to the prediction stage, where what if scenario by leveraging AI/ML and so on.
Thanks. Absolutely, Amit. Fascinating. Again, so we are 4 minutes top of the hour. So I would take a quick pause here and thank you. Thanks, Amit. Absolutely fascinating to hear from some of the areas that Tech Mahindra has done in this space. The whole value chain from acquisition to loyalty. It's it's a learning experience for me as well today. Scott, fascinating data. Thank you very much. Really interesting use cases, really interesting case in point in terms of personalization. Audio was really a highlight. I see a lot of LinkedIn comments coming up talking about that particular use case that you put it out there. Thank you again for joining us, Justin. As always, Bond Group is absolutely top of the really fantastic consulting entity, and we are fascinated to be working with your team. And thank you for bringing in very relevant points to this conversation today. So with that, thank you again. Appreciate you taking time, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.